Your brain will not stop screaming of a chaotic freefall the moment your intuition realizes this is no longer a tour, but a descent into a fractured reality. Feel the crushing 1,000-pound pressure bearing down on every fibre of your flesh as you hang suspended on the sheer, vertical cliffs of Sigiriya, where colossal stone-lined claws look ready to crush any intruder into dust. Or when you are forced to hold your breath in the subterranean labyrinth of Derinkuyu, feeling the weight of millions of tons of limestone pressing down from above, ready to seal you forever into the pitch-black earth. Every pore on your skin bristles under the humid heat, but what truly triggers the cold sweat is the wind howling through the rock fissures like the roar of a waking beast. These are terrestrial scars, where humanity performed brutal plastic surgeries into the flesh and bone of nature to erect impossible wonders. At this precarious threshold, survival and the abyss of absolute despair are separated by a mere hair's breadth. What is the grim truth? These structures were not built for shelter, but to defy every limit of human endurance. Can you hear the screeching ring of time echoing from the maw of these mysteries? Forget everything you thought you knew, because here, life is a privilege, reserved only for those who dare to cross the boundary of the impossible. Hold fast to the cliffside and hold your breath, because we begin exactly where human arrogance reached the clouds. Sigiriya, Sri Lanka. At Sigiriya, you stand face to face with a massive 200-metre tall magma monolith, a lion fortress. Rising from the heart of a deep green basin like an arrogant challenge hurled straight at the sky. Here, the line between supreme royalty and the abyss of utter despair is a mere hair's breadth away. The air here is thick with the pungent stench of silt and the heavy musk of freshly broken tropical rains. Your chest tightens, adrenaline surging as you cling to flimsy, rusted iron ladders hanging suspended over nothingness. Mountain winds howl relentlessly, threatening to rip you off the slick steps, where a single misstep means a fatal freefall onto the cold stone floor below. Your skin crawls before the frescoes of maidens soaring on the high cliffside. It feels as though the sinful breath of the patricidal king, Kassapa, still lingers, turning this summit into an isolated paradise built to escape reality. The impossibility of Sigiriya lies not in its blueprint, but in a mad, vertical urban planning executed on a precarious precipice. The ancients used blood and sweat to haul thousands of tons of brick and stone up the mountain summit, performing a daring architectural surgery on the flesh of the cliff. The greatest enemy here was not swords or spears, but isolation at the apex and violent tropical storms. Yet, through a stroke of engineering genius, a sophisticated hydraulic system conquered gravity, forcing water to flow backward up the mountain, turning this arid monolith into a green spiderweb, a breathing Garden of Eden in mid-air. No sooner has the breath of Sigiriya faded than the suffocating grip of the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta jungle tightens around you. At TAYUNA, the ground is no longer flat. It is an eternal stone staircase linking reality to a civilization buried deep beneath Colombia's thick blanket of mist. Beneath a dense canopy reeking of damp, rotting leaves, your world shrinks into 1,200 moss-covered stone steps, steep and slick as the ribs of some ancient monster. The surrounding space offers nothing but the thundering roar of waterfalls and the deafening screech of insects that paralyzes the eardrums. Your heart hammers against your ribs as you realize you are trespassing in the sacred ground of the Kogi, where every single step is a battle between the grip of your boots and the slippery stranglehold of death. The paradox of TAYUNA is its deliberate disappearance. While other wonders flaunted their grandeur before nature, TAYUNA chose submission, morphing into a biomimetic entity to melt into the primal green of the jungle to evade invaders. This is a masterpiece of non-invasive architecture. Ancient engineers arranged massive stone circles along the sheer mountainside, utilizing the sheer flexibility of stacked stone structures to disperse pressure, resisting the devastating erosion of equatorial rainforest downpours. A resilient fortress of stone, outlasting the very souls who forged it. The chill from TAYUNA's stone terraces still haunts your flesh, but the Petén jungle of Guatemala will soon burn you with an entirely different brand of terror. As the dense foliage ahead parts, TIKAL looms large, a colossal stone jaw of the earth grinding against the dark blue sky. Here you are swallowed whole by cold grey limestone skyscrapers that dwarf the canopy of thousand-year-old trees. Cast your eyes up to the summit of Temple 4. This stone behemoth stands 70 meters tall, an arrogant defiance of gravity. The air here is thick with the smell of damp, decaying leaves and the horrifying roars of spider monkeys sounding like the agonizing screams of prisoners from a millennium ago. Your chest tightens as you realize you are standing in the center of an extremist religious citadel, where the line between life and sacrifice is separated by a single step on the steep, slick terraces. The existence of this megacity is a ruthless paradox. It was built where nature refused to grant the lifeblood of survival. Not a single river flows through it. To tame the Earth's hostility, the Maya performed a massive surgical operation, transforming entire plazas and causeways into a giant, breathing funnel. This lithic system channeled every drop of rainwater into plaster-lined artificial reservoirs, turning the fury of tropical monsoons into the sole lifeblood, sustaining tens of thousands of souls deep within the lonely jungle. If the arrogance of TIKAL leaves you reeling, prepare to face the cradle of darkness buried deeper within the Petén Basin. To reach El Mirador, your feet must conquer 60 kilometers of thick mud, toxic mosquitoes, and a tangled trap of roots, where every comfort of the modern world is denied right at the jungle's edge. Scanning the horizon, what you mistake for a natural mountain is actually La Danta, a limestone monster of such cataclysmic volume it could swallow the Great Pyramids of Giza whole. Imagine the crushing weight of 2.8 million cubic meters of stone pressing down on the sodden jungle floor, creating an invisible pressure that suffocates the surrounding air. The musty stench of decomposing vegetation strikes your nostrils, blending with the sudden, violent flapping of a hawk's wings from the peak of the 72-meter stone tower. Seizing your heart. At this altitude, you are no longer an observer. You are a microscopic creature exposed to the watchful eyes of a sleeping civilization. The paradox of La Danta is its direct confrontation with physical limitations. To erect this non-linear structure, the ancient Maya consumed vast amounts of resources, clear-cutting entire forests just to fire the lime mortar. El Mirador's foundation system does not sit rigidly. It was engineered as a multi-layered load-bearing skeleton, dispersing maximum weight deep into the earth so the monument would not sink into the mire. A wonder that simultaneously invites and threatens, drifting through the high jungle clouds like a phantom of absolute power. The suffocation of the Maya pyramids slowly recedes, making way for a new terror, the sheer disorientation of an erased labyrinth. Welcome to the UPANO Valley, where traditional geographical maps have just been shredded by lasers piercing through the dense fog of Ecuador. Beneath the lush skin of the Amazon jungle lies a massive urban skeleton, assimilated and swallowed whole over 2 millennia. Do not let the green deceive you. Every step you take treads upon dead straight causeways that slice like brutal slashes through history. The equatorial air bakes like a furnace, carrying the stench of scorched clay and heavy moisture rising from the dark earth. The engineering of survival here was a dramatic compromise with mud and floodwaters. The ancients did not choose a rigid confrontation with nature. They chose an intellectual submission. They engineered over 6,000 complex earthen platforms, transforming them into a biomimetic system interconnected by a road network with deep drainage ditches on either side to bleed off the energy of torrential downpours. They did not use stone to build ramparts. They used the very flesh of the earth to erect barriers, turning the jungle into a closed garden city. A magnificent plastic surgery forcing the earth to serve human ambition. Leaving the muddy mounds of the Amazon behind, you are flung into a savage war for sovereignty between stone and roots in the kingdom of Angkor. Here, Cambodia welcomes you not with the tranquility of temples, but with the suffocating stranglehold of arboreal monsters devouring the souls of sandstone blocks. Look up at the colossal ficus roots at Ta Prohm. They do not grow from the soil. They pour down like a powerful stream of green lava, crushing corridors and pulverizing the relief carvings of Apsara celestial dancers. Amidst the dense morning mist and the smell of damp, decaying, moss-covered stone, you will feel the physical stretching of the temple structure as ancient wooden fibers pierce deep into the veins of the stone. The ultimate paradox lies in the gargantuan Barai irrigation network beneath the earth. Angkor is a hydraulic city, a living organism breathing through water. The ancient Khmer tamed an entire floodplain by digging artificial reservoirs kilometers long, keeping the sandstone structures from cracking under the scorching dry season and preventing them from being wiped out by monsoon floods. It was a grand compromise with the tides, turning the destructive power of water into a fluid cyclical current that sustained an empire of 1 million people. The black waters of the New River have just propelled you out of the ruined corridors of ANGKOR, throwing you into another green fortress in Belize. LAMANAI, rightfully dubbed the submerged crocodile, does not rise from the earth, but breaches the surface of the lagoon like an apex predator lurking in the deep. The boat engine dies, replaced by the terrifying roars of howler monkeys echoing off the towering limestone cliffs, paralyzing your eardrums. Do not let the stillness of the lake fool you. Beneath that silt lies thousands of years of accumulation from the most stubborn Maya city in history. Here, the line between civilization and the Blackwater abyss is a mere hair's breadth away. The survival of LAMANAI is a testament to engineering defiance. While inland Maya cities collapsed and disintegrated due to drought, the people here transformed the lagoon into an inexhaustible trade highway. Structures like the Mars Temple or the Jaguar Temple are not just architectural fortresses. They are aerodynamic entities enveloped by a brutal mangrove ecosystem. Using the sheer hostility of the marsh as a defensive shield against all enemies. The pitch-black water of the LAMANAI lagoon has barely receded before the darkness of the Andean abyss closes in on you. At Machu Picchu, fog is not a weather phenomenon. It is a grey shroud concealing a brutal gash cut into a sheer mountainside. At 2,430 meters, the air thins to a bone-dry crisp, every breath carrying the icy bite of glacial frost and the smell of stones compressed under centuries of pressure. Look down. You will see the Urubamba River roaring like a silver serpent, desperately gnawing at the base of the mountain. A single misstep, and you plummet into oblivion. Yet, amidst this fatal vertigo, the Inca forged a mad compromise with gravity. Fear creeps into your mind as you realize over 60% of this structure is actually an underground city. A massive foundation and drainage system buried deep within the mountain to keep the surface from sliding into the abyss. They utilized mortarless ashlar masonry to keep, allowing the stones to dance and flex during earthquakes rather than resist them. The salt of sweat mixes with the thick moisture on your skin, creating a sticky sensation that contrasts violently with the dry, powerful chill of the divine stones. The mists of Machu Picchu have barely cleared when the colossal stone ghosts of Sacsayhuamán loom large, obliterating any concept of human scale. In Cusco, the earth contorts along zigzagging walls shaped like the bared teeth of a massive jaguar, ready to crush anyone who underestimates the power of the stratigraphy. Limestone blocks weighing over 200 tons tower before your eyes. They are not inanimate materials. They are entities defying every law of modern physics. The high-altitude air is suffocatingly thin, thick with the taste of stone dust and the howling of wind whistling through seams so tight not even a human hair can penetrate them. The chill radiating from the stone walls cuts through your clothes, biting deep into your marrow, awakening your primal instinct of fear. The secret to this citadel's eternal survival lies in its active, three-tiered zigzag wall design. Instead of building rigid, flat surfaces easily toppled by seismic shocks, the Inca bent the stone rows into zigzags, transforming the structure into an elastic armor that perfectly disperses the shock energy from the Earth's fault lines. Confronted by this threatening majesty, you suddenly realize you are but a passing plankton drifting against an eternal legacy of steel and stone. The ferocious Andes have barely receded when the blindingly blue sky of the Tibetan Plateau traps you in a vortex of red sand. The GUGE Kingdom appears not as a city, but as a massive tumor burrowing directly into the heart of a bizarre pyramid-shaped mountain. Here, the boundary between life and annihilation is completely erased by the dust of time. Stare upward, and hundreds of pitch-black caves look back like the hollow eye sockets of a giant skull, staring down into the abyss of the Sutlej River. The wind screaming through the dark tunnels inside the mountain sounds like the agonizing wails of 100,000 souls who vanished overnight in a single night of terror. Your chest tightens as you realize you are standing before a colossal architectural mummy, where desert dust and high-altitude isolation are grinding down the final ruins. The paradox of survival here lay in a ruthless retreat into the earth. The ancient people of GUGE didn't choose to battle the violent storms head-on. They executed a mad surgical operation, turning the mountain into a closed fortress, with a vertical tunnel system cutting from the base all the way up to the royal palace. During the brutal, endless winters, when snow choked every pass, the heart of the mountain was the sole lung keeping them alive. They turned stone and dirt into elastic armor, using the protective embrace of the stratigraphy to shield the kingdom's lifeblood from the ultimate isolation of the Himalayas. The red sandstorm from the GUGE kingdom has just broken, the icy chill of the extreme altitude still clinging to your coat when Ollantaytambo materializes, an arrogant challenge hurled by the Inca against the transience of human life. At the epicenter of the sacred valley, your world is suffocated by sheer stone terraces, where the line between the cliff face and the abyss is a mere hair's breadth away. Rivet your gaze upon the 6 monolithic blocks, weighing dozens of tons that stand defiant on the soaring summit. They are carved and fitted so perfectly that a single atom could scarcely slip between them. The wind howling through the narrow stone joints creates a deep, hollow groan, like the moaning of stone beasts ripped from quarries on the opposite mountain, separated by a vast gaping chasm. The brutal truth lies within this unfinished construction site. This is a masterpiece abandoned mid-stroke when the hooves of invaders overran the land. The engineering secret here is a defiance of all physical limitations. The Inca moved these colossal stones across the ferocious Urubamba River, hauling them back up hundreds of meters via a brilliant system of ramps and levers. They used no mortar to bind them. The entire structure chose submission before seismic activity through flawless interlocking joints, turning 1,000-ton stones into a living entity capable of moving to survive through centuries of tempests. The unfinished dream of the Inca at Ollantaytambo has barely receded into the darkness of the canyon when the dry heat of the Four Corners surrounds you. At Mesa Verde, the ground is no longer a safe haven. It has been hollowed out to make way for a survival hanging suspended between heaven and earth. Sandstone palaces erupt from natural rock alcoves like a set of stone jaws, bared amidst the iron bars of destiny. Cast your eyes up to the massive rock arch sheltering the entirety of Cliff Palace, and you will feel the claustrophobia of a community that chose to hide beneath the shadow of 1,000-ton boulders. Your chest traps the smell of dirt dust and the stifling heat radiating from the cliff face, carrying the bitter dryness of scorched grass and a terrifying silence. The wind threading through the stone alcoves creates long, eerie, howling sounds like the ancestral Pueblo spirits calling back to an era when safety was measured solely by the steepness of vertical cliffs. Your skin tightens under the blistering sun, as if every drop of moisture in your body is being sucked dry by the brutality of the Colorado desert. The paradox of Mesa Verde is its mysterious disappearance. This was a daring architectural surgery into a sheer cliff where sandstone bricks and mud mortar were arranged to lean into natural vaulted rock shelters. Structure did not choose to confront the blistering heat or ancestral enemies, it chose to conceal itself. The stone vault above acted as a natural aerodynamic climate control system, shielding the city from the equatorial sun and winter blizzards, turning a precarious cliff into a flawless ecological fortress. The dryness of the Mesa Verde cliffs has barely broken when a narrow, dark fissure, named the Sik, swallows you into the heart of the Jordanian desert. At Petra, the world is not built of bricks. It is carved directly out of brilliant rose, red, and purple sandstone, creating a colossal necropolis breathing with the spirit of a lost empire. The lone road leading into the heart of the city constricts your vision between two towering cliffs, exposing only a sliver of blue sky as thin as a thread. Suddenly, from that narrow gap, the facade of Al-Kazne materializes like a magnificent phantom in the wan sunlight. Your breath quickens as you realize the scale of the 40-meter Corinthian columns meticulously chiseled into the very spine of the mountain. An arrogant display of power in the heart of a deadly wasteland. The impossibility of Petra lies not in its reliefs, but in its ability to control the White Death, drought. The Nabateans executed a mad hydraulic surgery, transforming an arid basin into a breathing, man-made oasis. Via a subterranean canal network miles long pinned tightly to the sandstone cliffs. They completely tamed sudden flash floods, turning the destructive power of water into a cyclical current serving ultimate luxury amidst a ruthless desert. The brilliant rose glow of Petra has barely dissolved into nothingness when the absolute silence of the Al-Ula desert lays siege to you. At Hegra, space is defined not by streets or plazas, but by solitary stone monoliths erupting from a sea of golden sand, where death is carved into the most magnificent and lonely works of art on the planet. Stand face to face with Qasr al-Farid, a colossal tomb chiseled straight into a single rock, standing completely isolated under a blistering 40 degrees Celsius sun. Its facade is unfinished, with chisel marks from 2,000 years ago still scarred into the stone. As if the craftsmen had just dropped their tools and vanished into thin air. Amidst the howling desert wind carrying abrasive sand dust, your chest will tighten before the absolute exposure of Mediterranean-style motifs proudly sculpted into the flesh of the wasteland. The grim secret that allowed Hegra to stand firm across 2 millennia is its ruthless isolation and adaptive architectural philosophy. The Nabateans executed a top-down rock carving technique, meticulously calculating the geometric angles of the monolith to transform it into a natural shield. This slight tilt allowed the structure to disperse the pressure of sandstorms and extreme thermal expansion, keeping the lonely tombs from collapsing against the brutal torrent of time. The silence of the Hegra Desert has just been shredded by a cataclysmic roar, echoing from the past toward the Bay of Naples. Welcome to Pompeii. Not a city, but a snapshot of death, rinsed in magma and framed in volcanic ash. The ground here is no ordinary earth. It is a thick layer of ash that was once the fiery sky of 79 AD. Plaster casts lie contorted in the corners of homes. They are not statues. They are the psychic voids left behind when human bodies were melted by extreme pyroclastic heat. The air here seems to still carry a heavy reek of sulfur, blending with the screeching ring of time echoing from the maw of the ferocious, awakening Mount Vesuvius. The ruthless paradox of Pompeii is this: nature destroyed life to preserve existence. It was the suffocating blanket of ash that acted as a gargantuan vacuum seal, completely blocking oxygen and moisture to protect this urban skeleton. The basalt street networks and brilliant frescoes were unmarred by time, turning the entire city into a fortress, freezing humanity's most tragic moment. The tragic frenzy of Pompeii has barely subsided before the cold iron of a military order besieges you amidst the Algerian plateau. TIMGAD looms, not as a city, but as a colossal stone chessboard, a flawless geometric gash stamped into the wild flesh of the Ores Mountains. This is where Rome flaunted its iron discipline against the chaos of the Sahara. Every pore seems to stand on end under the scorching, blistered sun as you march through ruined colonnades that stretch in straight lines to the dead horizon. The air is thick with the dry choke of dust and a deathly silence, where the boundary between a proud civilization and the maw of the desert is separated by nothing more than a thin line of masonry. The secret to TIMGAD's millennial survival was not military might, but its fossilization beneath a blanket of fine sand. When the empire collapsed, Saharan sandstorms swiftly smothered the city in an absolute protective shroud. The brutal severity of the desert choked out oxidation, freezing this entire geometric layout into a subterranean sleeper. A ruthless compromise, the desert swallowed the living but returned to history the most pristine urban skeleton on Earth. The suffocating order of TIMGAD vanishes into nothingness only for the tragic opulence of Palmyra to trap you inside the Syrian desert basin. Dubbed the Bride of the Desert, this place does not appear as a mere ruin, but as a forest of stone pillars rising from the dust, testament to a financial behemoth that once dared defy both Rome and Persia. An icy current of dread ripples down your spine as you pass through the ruined monumental arch, where the terrestrial scars of modern history have freshly lacerated ancient wounds. The pillars stand lonely and defiant, like gaunt fingers pointing straight at the heavens to demand justice. The air here hangs heavy, with the stench of gunpowder and debris, mixing with the shriek of the desert wind sweeping through devastated blocks of sandstone. To sustain a metropolis of 200,000 in the heart of a dead wasteland, Palmyra's engineers executed a monumental feat of subterranean water management. They performed a geological surgery, channeling the Efka spring through stone conduits snaking beneath the entire city. The box girder design and resilient chain link joints of the colonnades allowed the structures to bend before violent sandstorms and extreme thermal swings, forging this oasis into a commercial fortress that stood immortal before being trampled by bigotry. Leaving behind the sun-baked pillars of Palmyra, you are hurled straight into a humid, haunting labyrinth in the middle of the Pacific. Nan Madol, the Venice of the shadows. does not rise from the earth. It spawns from dead coral reefs, where 92 artificial islets of pitch-black basalt silently sink under their own crushing weight and the rising tides. Your chest constricts as you realize this deathly stillness is torn open only by the wind howling through rows of black stone columns, sounding like the whispers of Sodler priests recalling an era when life was sustained by horrific blood sacrifices. A 90% humidity coupled with the biting brine of sea salt clings to your skin, a stark contrast to the freezing black stone walls battered by the roaring surf right beneath your boots. The sheer impossibility of Nan Madol lies in the 750,000 tons of basalt transported from the far side of the island without wheels or pulleys. The ancients struck a ruthless bargain with the ocean. They built the city directly on the reef, using stacked box girder designs interwoven like leaning towers. The 1,000-ton weight of the stone was meticulously calculated to neutralize and disperse the impact of tsunamis, weaponizing the very heaviness of geology to tame the ravenous, corrosive fury of the vast ocean. The tides of Nan Madol have barely dragged you into the abyss before the pressure of the Western Pacific squeezes your chest tight. At Yonaguni, the boundary between breath and suffocation is as thin as a wisp of smoke beneath the ocean floor. The surrounding space collapses into the thudding of your own pulse in your ears and the hiss of air escaping your dive tank, mingling with the metallic taste of artificial oxygen. The freezing grip of the Kuroshio current creeps through your wetsuit, touching your skin like a grim reminder that you have trespassed into a dominion where mankind holds no dominion. Your heartbeat seizes as you come face to face with the altar or the stadium, vast flat structures plunging 25 meters deep, standing monumental as if defying every law of natural erosion. The paradox of Yonaguni lies in its flawless 90-degree angles and straight trenches etched along the gargantuan monolith. If this is an artificial marvel, the civilization that forged it executed a titanic geological surgery before being swallowed by the Ice Age. This stepped rock formation acts as a hydrodynamic diffusion system, allowing ferocious ocean currents to bleed through the terraces rather than twisting and shattering the colossus. A grand mechanical ghost meditating in the heart of a perilous, deep blue ocean. The pressure from Yonaguni's stone blocks has barely loosened its death grip when the warm, deceptive waters of the Laconian Gulf wrap around your body. At Pavlopetri, you do not face mindless, monolithic stones. You are swimming through the memory of a 5,000-year-old metropolis laid bare beneath the Mediterranean. This is a place where time did not pass. It was permanently submerged. Peering through your dive mask, ancient blocks of houses, streets and courtyards emerge as crisp as a freshly drawn blueprint. The water here is thick with sea salt, and the frantic hammering of your heart against your eardrums, blending with the low hiss of the snorkel in the blue expanse. A sudden dread creeps in as you realize you're gliding over stone tombs built directly into the floors of these ancient homes. A coexistence of the living and the dead, frozen forever. By the sea after a cataclysmic earthquake. The endurance of Pavlopetri's urban skeleton beneath the waves is a masterpiece of resilience. Unlike terrestrial structures ravaged by human hands and the atmosphere, Pavlopetri was cradled by a low-energy, shallow-water ecosystem. A fine layer of marine sediment blanketed the sandstone foundations, acting as a natural suit of armor against the corrosive bite of sea salt. A surreal journey where man borrows the waters of the gods to touch a civilization sleeping in the deep. Leaving behind these coordinates where time and space hold no dominion, your consciousness is now a fractured mirror. Reflecting grim truths humanity was meant to forget. These impossible sights are no mere dead stone corpses or melancholy mazes. They are ruthless crucible tests where the earth's strata and ancient gods allied to weed out the mediocre from those carrying the blood of true adventure. Our journey never truly ends. For when one door of mystery slams shut, other deadly paths begin to beckon beneath the heavy fog of history. If you feel the pulse of courage screaming in your chest, leave your footprint by casting your vote for the next coordinate we will unearth together. Do not just stand there and watch. Let your curiosity become the torch that tears through the forbidden zones of the earth. Remember this: danger is engineered not to halt the traveler's stride, but to honor those daredevils who place their lives on the scales just to touch eternal truth for a single fleeting moment. Between the radiant glory of discovery and the cowardly safety of the dark, will you choose to fade out in silence or burn bright before the impossible?